My name is Darren, and I love talking African affairs. But today, I want to talk about a case that I've been following in South Africa of the Judge President of the Eastern Cape, called, and I read the name, called Selby Mbenenge, and the accused, sorry, who is the accused, but the person who is the complainant here is Andiswe Mengo, who is a court secretary. Okay. She filed in a case and said she was sexually harassed, and the person who's sexually harassed her is literally the boss up there, and the full judge president of the Eastern Cape. So this case has emotions all over the place, and I've been following a lot of clips. I watched the YouTube of about 7 hours of this whole hearing, and people have mixed emotions, especially people who believe have been sexually harassed before, or people who are victims. And the responses that I see, or the comments I see in all these videos, is that he's an arrogant guy, he's a rude guy. And that reminded me of something. I did law. I went to law school, even when I'm practicing journalism. And the interesting bit about studying law was, and it's this very case that brought back those the things that I study. And if you've been lucky enough to be taught by a good lecturer in law who is actually practicing, not only that, but must be very good with a good track record in court, you will understand what I'm going to say. So, number one, in my view, I don't want to say he's rude or he's arrogant. Because of my experience in law and what I studied, this is what happens when it comes to law. Court or cases are not reasoned with emotions. Number one, emotions, they don't work in court. Okay, so it's not about emotions. And number two, it's not about morals. It is the law. That is why you hear words or phrases such as something may be morally wrong, but legally right. Okay, I'll give you an example. Murdering is wrong morally, right? We agree on that. But killing may be legally okay. If you've heard of things called firing squad, where if you're found guilty for murder, for genocide, and all these things, and the punishment here is you're sentenced to death by hanging, by firing squad, or life imprisonment. But now I'll focus on hanging or firing squad. What happened to Saddam, the former president of Sudan? He was hanged to death. So you find that it is legal to kill because the law says so. It's punishable by death. But on the other side, it's not right. Okay? So the same thing when we come to the argument of abortion, and this is a very sensitive one, where they will tell you if you abort, it's morally wrong. Or it could also be legally wrong, now depending on how you argue your case. And here, many times people are going to say, due to complications, medical or emergencies or health emergencies, we abort. And now that becomes legally right. But you're killing, in law, they believe that a fetus is a living person because it breathes and eats what the mother is eating. It's feeding. If you do an operation, what you find there is life. So you, to abort, you might have been saving life, but you're killing someone. So the basis of law is not moral. It's not based on moral. Law is not emotional. Law is logic. They base on the law. And one of the professors who taught me law one time said that if you're ever defending someone in court, you have one job to do. One, it's called you need to create reasonable doubt in the case. If you must find a way of creating reasonable doubt, because that way, then whoever is listening to the case, or the person you before, could be a judge or a magistrate, they must be able to say, okay, there's something that we need to look in here, especially if the plea is not guilty. Now, a job of a lawyer at the end of the day is two things: to either help the defendant not be guilty and proven innocent at the end of the day and acquitted of all charges, or number two, if at all there is some level of proof that actually a crime was committed, and what we are looking at is punishment or probably life imprisonment or death. The lawyer here is looking at, how do I get a lenient sentence for my person? I'll give the most common example. Murder is punishable where I am, is punishable of up to 25 years in jail, but can also be death depending on how the person was killed. Okay, but also your lawyer can come up with an argument to say this is manslaughter, and instead of going to jail for 25 years imprisonment, you go for 4 years in jail. So that is a job of a lawyer. And now you're looking at the Judge President Selby here, who is a lawyer, and he understands, and probably he has had cases of sexual harassment before. He knows what it is. Okay? So number one is that he is going to argue based on, or maybe let me use the word creating reasonable doubt because I used it status before. He's going to use things like context. And I'm sure you watched all that throughout when he was saying the context. His emojis of bananas turned into, it's just bananas. Yet the context of many times the conversation, it could mean that word. You know what I'm saying. Oui. Okay? And says no. Or maybe remove your top. I want to see how you're structured. And for your, in your thinking, maybe, and everyone would think that he's asking for nudes. And the man brings an argument and says, I did ask for nudes. I just want to see how someone is structured. So law is a very interesting thing. And for me, I'll tell you something. As a lawyer, you're told that it doesn't matter how big the ship is, but your ability to find a hole that can sink the ship will make you a good lawyer. So these are not moral issues. These are issues of the law, creating reasonable doubt and saving someone. It's logic. So let's assume the example I've given, that if the ship was how big the case is, how big it is, but it's just one hole that will let the water in and the ship will sink. So a lawyer is going to look for any loophole in the whole case and will bring the ship down. That's how they do it. And that's the job. So if you're going to argue these things with emotions, morals, you will not understand this case. But if you're going to look at it in a sense of law, legal arguments, and logic, you're going to enjoy the case. So I don't want to say I am for or against on all these things, but it's just the interest in how far this case can go. Is a senior lawyer going to be convicted? Or will he be found guilty for sexual harassment? Or is he going to get out of this? And the test of the case, very interesting. So put that in mind and let's follow this case together, because I can't wait to see the outcome of this case. And that case will give you a few things to learn. That for those of you who think law is for thieves or corruption or anything like that, one day when you need a lawyer, you will always refer back to cases and understand how to create reasonable doubt, how to use the law, and make sure you create loopholes in any case. My name is Darren.